Good afternoon. My name is Shannon Williams. I am the CEO of the Home Furnishings Association, and today you are joining us for an incredible webinar that Caprice has planned called Merchandising Strategies to Elevate Your Online Store. What we're hoping to accomplish today is that your takeaway is going to be how do you optimize every step of the journey with proven tactics for showcasing products, and then create a seamless user experience while leveraging data-driven insights for personalization. Just as a reminder, this webinar is recorded and it's available on demand at myhfa.org/webinar. Whatever questions you have, and I'm assuming there's going to be a ton because the questions that came in are amazing, but use that Q&A button down at the bottom of the screen. I will get to as many questions as possible. And before we get started, I want to thank Synchrony, who is our education thought leadership sponsor that really makes these webinars happen. So thank you, Synchrony. And let's go ahead and start off by introducing you to our panel of experts. First, we have Laura Corey, who is the CEO of Shoptelligence. If you're not familiar with Shoptelligence, you probably are living under a rock, but they are the leading revenue acceleration platform that is powered by AI and big data. And they were originally designed specifically for home furnishings, for the home furnishings industry. Laura herself has actually designed and built several businesses for Fortune 500 companies, everything from concepts to operations. She's just a wealth of knowledge and a deep passion for this industry. So excited to have you here. Thank you, Laura. We have Genesis Miranda Longo, who is the head of marketing and home furnishings at Shopify, and specifically over the home furnishings vertical. Shopify is the leading global commerce company that is really engineered for speed and customization, reliability and security, while delivering a better shopping experience for consumers online, in store, and everywhere in between. I've gotten to know Genesis quite a bit over the last year, and she's brought incredible insight, and I'm very excited for you guys to hear what she has to say. We also have Ian Leslie, who is the CMO at Industry West Furniture, and has spent the last 10 years and longer working on lead gen, demand gen, website redesigns, and really how do you drive merchant success through integrated campaigns and optimizing that customer acquisition and advocacy. Ian, we're so happy to have you here. And last but certainly not least, we have Beck Bessiker, who is the CEO of 3D Cloud. The company that they're working with is a cloud-based platform for furniture and home improvement retailers that is really pioneering the 3D content management and the 3D applications that include AR, VR, product configurations, 3D room planners. And he comes with a really rich experience where him and his brother actually were just innovators in marketing technology, and actually were the first. They engineered the cloud-based retargeting platform you guys all probably know is Copient, and then they were acquired by NCR. So we have incredible people in the room that are going to help us figure this out. So let's start off right at the top and talk about really mapping that customer journey just for better engagement. So Beck, I'm going to throw this to you first. Can you share your perspective on what makes the online buying journey unique compared to the in-store shopping? And then why is mapping the online journey critical for online success?
Sure, happy to. So the thing we've been surprised about, you mentioned some of the different tools we provide, is that every single time we put out like a new tool that allows the homeowner to do more of the shopping journey on their own, like recently we were doing like modular configurators for like sectionals, and that's been very popular, or like closet sets. And every time we put one out, we're you just quite never know what the reception is, and it's almost every single time it's sort of this latent, insatiable appetite to be able to do more before you ever get to the store. And when I say do more, it's not like, hey, I spend 3 minutes on a sectional configurator. It's like 12 sessions of a half hour each, like where people are just digging in and researching and saving and sharing, and to the point that like they have in their mind, I want to come into the store and have done everything I could possibly do, that I can just drop it on the counter and say, sell me this. And that's probably the theme that we've seen really in the last couple of years, is that so far we haven't found a spot where if you can let the customer do it, they won't, or we haven't found an instance where they won't do it, where it's like, oh, that's too difficult, or I don't want to do it, or it's a category I'm not interested. We put a tool out and they want more of it, and then it just kind of keeps growing. And so we've seen that over and over again. So So to me, like I think the theme, or at least where we're working at, the big theme around the customer journey is don't worry about, giving them too much. Give them as many tools as you possibly can. They'll take advantage of them. And the byproduct of that is by the time they get to the store, they're much more educated. And then obviously we're all thinking about staffing and, how busy salespeople are, that, it takes the lift off of them and makes them be more efficient as well. So I don't like what we've learned is you just can't really put too much out there that they're not going to, take advantage of.
Thanks for that. Genesis, is that your experience too, or do you have a different perspective on what's making the online buying journey unique?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the biggest advantage with the online journey is all the data that you get. I mean, in store, you can get to know the customers and talk to them, and the in-store associates can build relationships with them. But online, you get incredible data. I mean, you're knowing exactly who they are, where they came from. Was it like a paid landing a promotion that you put out, an ad that you put out? What are they clicking through on your website? What products are they looking at? What pictures are they most interested in? What are they saying to the customer service reps online? You have those full transcriptions and data, right? You can do so much with it to then optimize that experience for them and really see where their pain points are and where you can help turn that, or you can help accelerate them through the funnel and ultimately convert and become loyal customers. I think of Ruggable, one of the brands that I work with. They analyze that buying journey from, because they know that's not a snap decision, right? It takes lots of research to make that commitment. And so they strategically mapped out this journey and then ultimately saw that customers were needing help, even choosing what type of rug or getting an idea of the types of rugs that they wanted. So they built out this rug quiz to help you find like right match, right fit, um, and then being able to like narrow down the options that you have. And through that in itself, they're now getting so much more data that they can feed into their loyalty program, into those emails to personalize that experience even more. So I just think the online journey provides that data that you can then use for personalization and loyalty conversions, right? It's the possibilities are really endless there.
That's really good insight. No, Laura, I know you're a big fan of mapping that journey. Can you talk more about the mapping aspect and maybe what you see as your perspective that makes things a little bit different in that online?
Yeah, I think it's important first to state, especially in home furnishings, that mapping the online journey is valuable. What is more valuable is recognizing that it is a full omni-channel journey. And so the online piece is critical and the offline piece is critical, and it's for different reasons. So online, really understanding what the objectives are of that consumer, as Beck mentioned, the shopper wants to be as informed as they possibly can be before they spend time going to the store and really wanting to transact and see and touch and feel the goods. The idea here is to the extent you can not only map, what people are doing at different steps online, and the Ruggables example is a great one because they noticed a pain point, right, and addressed it. And so understanding, everything from where are customers coming from to how deep into the journey do they get? Do they land on a PDP, product detail page, right away, or are they going to listing pages before? Understanding the add to cart, understanding how many people are abandoning cart, but then even more importantly is understanding how many of those quote abandoned carts actually become transactions in store. Because in home furnishings, that end all be all, in some cases, yes, is the online transaction, but in most cases, that end all be all is the in-store transaction. So understanding that entire end-to-end journey online, linking it to offline, and then the third thing I would add is COVID helped here a lot, but understanding the offline to online piece of the transaction. So people are now going online, doing all their research, going into the store, checking a few more boxes, but they're not necessarily always purchasing. So understanding that store to site aspect is also a really important piece of that journey. And so being able to stitch it all together to really understand how customers behave and what questions they're trying to ask in each and get answered in each step is really important to developing the best omni-channel or end-to-end experience.
Thanks for that insight. So Ian, this is a really interesting thing to hear Laura say, because I was looking at your company's website earlier, And one of the things that makes your website really unique is that no need to click through to actually see the product, start looking at the rotation of the product, the price of the product, variations of the product. So if we're talking about mapping the online buying journey and the customer, what did you guys learn that made you remove some steps from that journey? Which also, based on what Genesis was saying, takes away a lot of data. What made you guys make that decision strategically?
Yeah, I mean, we're in an interesting spot because we are both serving D2C and B2B, and we don't have brick and mortar. So, and we're also at this, I've been saying recently, we're at this weird intersection where probably not as many people on this group, but a lot of people don't remember a time when like we went to furniture stores and ordered our furniture and it took 24 weeks and it showed up like, and was installed 26 weeks later, and we actually had to wait for things. So what we found was both from a D2C and B2B clientele, they wanted to see product that could arrive quickly, see product that had high inventory and purchase product. And on the B2B side, ask for quotes for that product. So large quantities. So particularly in serving our B2B clientele, where if you deal with restaurants, you deal with a lot of office space, et cetera. Furniture is the last thing in their budget, so they don't have lengthy lead time. So you need to show them things that are popular, that fit their needs, and that are in high quantity that we can get to them quickly. So it was really, why am I going to make them ask about 15 items that we may have only 10 to 30 of when I can show them items that we have 75 to 100 of, and try to get that in front of them as quickly as possible and get their minds rolling on that and get a decision made. So I think that's really where it went into like trying to narrow best we could the selection of the customer, particularly on the B2B side. And we do a fair amount of personalization in what we show our trade customer versus our G2C customer. But yeah, I mean, I think that was really the genesis, no pun intended, behind that decision.
That's really insightful. Laura, there was something that you mentioned. I know it's interesting. You and I were talking just a couple weeks ago at Mark, and we were talking about that customer journey and how there's some data that you shared with me that was really interesting from a mind shifting perspective. But you're talking about this omni experience. But if we're talking about, was in 2022, this industry took in what, $209 billion, and only 75 billion of that was through traditional brick and mortar. Mm-hmm. So what that tells us is there's a lot of business going to the online market. Can you tell me why? And I mean, we're talking 10 years ago, people did not shop like this. So there's e-commerce has obviously become such a key piece of it. If we talk to the average retailer, we're hearing it's like 10% of our sales. So can you talk about why is that omni-channel so experienced? I mean, I know that our core person that we're talking to right now owns a brick and mortar furniture store. And I think we always talk about disruption and what we're seeing in there. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And Genesis, from what you're seeing on the Shopify, and I'd love to get your experience after her.
Yeah. That's right. And so the brick and mortar piece of the business, share of the pie, I would say, is an important component, but it's not the entire home furnishings industry. And so understanding how more of the business is shifting toward the digital natives, if you will, the direct to consumer, e-com players, I think represents a huge opportunity actually for the brick and mortar, traditional brick and mortar retailers. If you think about any given room that you're sitting in, you make a decision about, the big pieces of furniture, I'm sitting in an office, the desk, the chair, some of the big pieces. And when you look at average ticket sizes of a traditional brick and mortar, we're at about a $1,500 ticket size. When you look at some of these e-com natives like Wayfair, their latest annual or quarterly report came out, their average ticket is about $298. And so when you look at furnishing a room, there is a huge opportunity to take more of the wallet share of the retailer by merchandising additional and adjacent categories, whether it's the, finishing accessories, whether it's the smaller case goods, et cetera. And when you look at a Wayfair or some of these other marketplace, Home Depot has a huge marketplace as an example. They're selling big stuff, but the majority of it is the smaller stuff. And so that piece of the business, there's a lot of SKUs and you can't stock them all. And so a successful brick and mortar retailer who wants to eat into that piece of the pie I would suggest needs to start looking at a broad furnish the room approach that takes into account the ability that, or the desire for consumers to refresh rooms and stay more in touch with the retailers that are helping them with those smaller kind of in-between purchases versus the big purchases that they make much less frequently. And so I think a big part of it is this idea of refreshing rooms and keeping current. And most brick and mortar retailers are focused on really the big stuff. And so accessories and loyalty marketing around furnishing the full room, I think, is a huge opportunity to take share from those, from the digital native e-com kind of smaller ticket retailers.
Thanks. Genesis, I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, no, I would at Shopify, I mean, we're all about unified commerce, especially in home furnishings. It's what we're focusing on and what we're helping furniture brands unlock. And unified commerce is not the same thing as omni-channel selling, right? Like omni-channel addresses coordination between sales channels more on the front end. So like having your e-commerce site, having your stores, having B2B, the wholesale channels, but it doesn't address the unification or the centralization of like operations and data and systems and infrastructure on the back end. And that's where the unlock is when you can unify all of those things in one. Like that's how you get growth, that's how you get efficiency, that's how you get better customer experiences, because you're able to see and map out the journey from the customer went online first, and then they were doing their research, and then they went in store, but then you know who they are and you're able to get data there. Then they come back online. Maybe when they're in store, they choose to do like you can implement endless aisle, like you don't have something in stock in store, but you're able to order it online, or vice versa. You order it online, but you want to do buy online pickup in store. Maybe you want to fulfill from your stores to get rid of some excess inventory there. So there's so many unlocks when it's unified. And I think that barrier is there where furniture companies are like, we're doing D2C, we're doing online, we're doing the stores. Why aren't we growing? And it's because they're siloed, right? They're complex, and it's hard to manage.
I think it's interesting when Laura brings up the whole different in AOV or ticket price. There was a couple year back period where we introduced a lot of accessories, and which really people were a lower price ticket and were converting much higher because of the price. And the algorithms were showing those products, and our higher price tickets weren't getting as much ad share because as a result. So we ended up splitting that off and running an entire sister brand with just accessories on a different Shopify site. So we actually run two brands right now, one for the furniture and one for the accessories. And so I mean, I think it's definitely a fair point in having a brand. But if you're, I guess, more of a brick and mortar and you're able to house all that in one location where it's both the big pieces and also the change your room over for the season sort of pieces, whether it's the candles, the throws, the dinnerware, or whatever. I mean, I think that's a great example, and it actually makes me feel pretty good hearing what the average ticket price is across the board, because ours is pretty close to that. So on the high side. So yeah, that's really interesting and a good point.
Beck, did you want to add to that conversation?
No, I think you guys covered that pretty well there. Thank you.
Yeah. So before we move off of this concept of mapping, for any retailer that maybe isn't mapping today, can you guys share what are the most common like stages in that online customer journey? And I know that we're both talking about omni-channel and unified channel or unified commerce. Can you talk me through what are the common stages that a retailer should be thinking about to align their merchandising strategies with each of this? And how do they align this to make better merchandising decisions? I'll throw this up to anybody that wants to grab it.
I can take the first cut at that. I detected two questions there, so I'll try to address them kind of separately, but they do dovetail. The first one is, what are the stages in the journey, right? This is a typical sales funnel, right? Awareness, consideration, etc. When you're looking in e-com, you have a few kind of major milestones, if you will. The first one is going from a higher level page, like a home page, a product listing page, and actually landing on a product detail page. That tends to be about 60% of traffic for a given retailer, 50 to 60% of traffic. Those are the people that are really interested in looking at products. Then you've got the linger time, if you will, how many product detail pages they're looking at to help understand what their level of intent is. Revisit rates to product detail pages are also really important. And then the next one is how many are actually adding to the cart. Because in home furnishings specifically, the cart tends to be a shopping list more so than it is an actual cart. And then once they add to the cart, how often are they coming back to look at the cart? Because this is again a high consideration purchase, and so they're not going to find a $2,000 sofa and just buy it right away. It's going to take some consideration. I think engagement with tools, so Markson's configurators, our recommendations, whether it's completing the room or finding similar items. All of those are also good things to keep an eye on, because those are intended to drive engagement and facilitate more research. And then of course you want to check out your e-com, your actual e-com close rate. If you're doing site to store, you also want to look at how often people are actually accessing the orders that were started in store and what that conversion rate is. And so there's a plethora of metrics, but it's pretty logical following the journey of a consumer.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I was just gonna say, you talked about effectively dwell time, and I mean, everybody we've talked to is, I mean, it's generally known that, if you're buying a car, the more time you sit in the seat of the car during the buying process, the more likely you are to buy that car, right? So it translates to the web as well. If you can increase dwell time and consideration, generally that trends towards more purchases and more repeat visits. And Laura mentioned tools. I can actually give you some data. I was looking. So give you an example from the DIY space. We work with Lowe's on their planning tools. And a year ago, if you were like buying a kitchen at Lowe's, a year ago, you'd come to the website and there would be like a static form that you might fill out. Name, address, interest, what's your project, et cetera, et cetera. Pretty plain Jane. So 0% of the people who were leads for the kitchen business came from anything other than like a lead form. So like in the last year, they've introduced a style quiz, what your preferences, are you traditional or whatever, and using imagery, which is pretty interesting. They don't use all this fancy language. They use imagery and let you pick and then educate you about like what your style is, which is kind of an interesting strategy to kind of begin. So you walk in, oh, I have a modern palette. Then they introduced an estimator tool, which takes like 5-10 minutes. Where you're just picking sizes, then a visualizer tool where you're like picking, finishes and showing your interest. And then finally a full scale 3D planning tool. So fast forward 1 year from that. So this last month, now only 9% go through the lead form. The balance, so 91% come through some sort of tool. They use a tool before they submit the lead. And on average, they spend 40 minutes in the tools and they use 2.5 tools, a combination of 2.5 tools before they submit a lead. So that's a really good real example of like the appetite once you get these things out there on your website, how much people will engage them as to help to assist them through the journey. So that's a good example of like, you can actually introduce tools to affect dwell time to increase, conversion.
Go ahead, Genesis.
I was just going to go back to your original question, so you can go ahead.
No, please.
Okay. Well, I was just saying, you originally had asked also about just what is that process? And so we know that the buyer journey can be very complex, especially when you're mixing the in-store and online, and how hard of a decision it is because it's furniture and it's a big investment. But ultimately, I think you can break it down into the sections, the pieces that Laura talked about. So I like to say discovery is searching for a couch while you're sitting on a couch, because we know 74% of people start their research online, and 50% of them are discovering those brands online on their phone. So really important to think through the mobile experience. And then when you think about evaluation, that's where things like AR and VR can come into play, because we know 94% there's increased rates of through AR experiences, which is what we're seeing. Selection or like actual checkout, I think is a key piece that a lot of furniture companies don't think about, because this is the part where, yes, they may be dwelling for a long time, but then you want to make it as easy as possible when they've decided that they're going to make that purchase to make that purchase, right? And so that's where things like for us, like Shop Pay or Shop Pay Installments comes in, where we don't even want you to have to put in your information. Like that should already be set so that you can just go through the process quickly, whether you're going to pay now or pay in installments. And then the post-purchase part of it, where like 90% of people want to track their order and have that be an easy component of it. So making sure that you're giving that information to them, that you're giving them delivery status updates if they haven't already picked it up. It's just more things to think through in the journey that I think are table stakes for furniture.
One of the questions that came in from one of the people watching, Anastasia had asked if, like, specifically looking at 3D product, in what ways does the use of 3D product displays or virtual try-ons that are powered by AI influence the consumer buying decisions compared to a traditional 2D image? And then what are some of the best practices that can maximize its impact?
I can do this one. I got tons of data. So I'm looking at our data sheet. So right now, we're seeing something on the order of magnitude of about 50 million AR views a month, kind of like across all of our clients. And the average view rate for AR is about 2.5% to 3%, but that's across all product categories. So that would be anything from a couch all the way to like a lamp. However, if you look at just a subset of larger categories like sofas, sectionals, dining tables, bedroom sets, things where people are like assessing fit, the view rate can be as much as like 10 to 12%. And so I think generally what everybody's kind of learned in the industry is, you know, if you've got some money to spend and you can't do your entire catalog and you're thinking about AR, focus on like the either heavy configuration and or relatively large items. And then finally, to answer that last part of the question is, if you do spend some time in AR, your typical purchase rate is about 2 to 3 times improved. Obviously, some of that is, you know, you're spending more time because you're more interested, but generally speaking, you get at least a 2 times conversion versus a product you don't view in AR. So yeah, there's a lot of data now out there too, but I see everybody kind of coalescing to the same observation, which is AR is a proxy for a tape measure, kind of a more entertaining tape measure.
Ian, what are some of the tools that y'all have leaned into, and have you found the same kind of success that Beck is talking about?
We do not use AR or 3D, 360, any of that. We've actually just invested in very high resolution, highly styled 2D. It's kind of our bread and butter. It's always been our bread and butter, is to show the furniture in the most aesthetically pleasing light possible, even to the point where a lot of people think our shadows are fake because they're so good on some of our pieces. But I mean, that's really where we've invested our time and money over the years. So while I don't doubt that a lot of these tools will help with lift, we are a relatively, you know, to the small side of SMB, bootstrapped company, and just don't have capital for a lot of the bells and whistles. But over the years, we've seen a lot of our success due to the fact of the aesthetic. And if you go to our site, and I think you guys notice, it's like the beauty of the furniture and how it goes full grade against, you know, most of it goes full grade across the entire PDP, is really like what we wanted to showcase and really give the customer the best light of the furniture, considering we don't have the brick and mortar location.
Yeah, and
Please go ahead, Genesis.
I was just going to say, like, if y'all have not been on Industry West's website, like, go and zoom in. I like giving the example of the Trace dining chair on your website, Ian, because I can literally feel it just by looking at it in the detail and like the closeness that you can get to it. And so, yes, like the evaluation process, like you may not need AR, VR. Like, it's just about 2 basic questions. I think it's boost, or how can you boost that customer confidence that they're getting the product for them that fits their aesthetic, that fits their home, and then how do you reduce the return rates? So it's, you can achieve those 2 things in many different ways. It doesn't just have to be AR, VR. It could be like what Ian just said about really focusing on the PDP and on the imagery. One of my other customers, Bowl and Branch, like they do it through live consultations where you can video chat and see the product and see the
Mhm.
in-store associate holding it and showing it to you and putting it somewhere so that you could see it, right? So there's a lot of different options. I think it's just about what your brand needs and what your mission is.
I think it's different for D2C versus B2B too. I mean, if we have a customer who wants 100 bar stools, like we'll gladly overnight them one for them to sit test. So it's, it's a different animal to an extent in terms than dealing with the D2C customer where that AR VR is I'm sure very, very useful and very beneficial.
I actually have a good observation. One thing we've seen is because of talking about photography, it used to be like the cost of photography used to be extremely high, right? Where you're doing sets and live photography and renting out a mansion and shipping everything there. And then, most retailers, they do something in the fall and they do something in the spring, and then they kind of use Photoshop to repurpose that content all year long. And it can be, maybe not, you have discontinued and you have old photography. And it's like, so what we're seeing is sort of an interesting, back to Ian's point, this kind of hybrid of like, hey, let's really invest in our premium stuff, but can we use other tools to sort of fill in throughout the rest of the year? And what that's led to, interesting, is some pretty interesting and creative concepts. Like, for instance, using some of the, whether it's, new 3D tools or AI tools, you can create content pretty quickly and inexpensively now. Now, it may not be what Ian's talking about, but for something for like a TikTok or social or Instagram, it could be. And what we found is a lot of retailers are, if the social team gets a hold of these tools, they get really creative. Like when the Barbie movie came out, we had 3 different retailers who were doing pink kitchens and pink rooms, and it was just fun and tongue in cheek, but it was topical, right? And it was getting viewed and it was getting shared and it was introducing people to their brand. And so and that's also translated into like a lot more creativity on the carousel on the product page. It doesn't just have to be, kind of the standard, silo and then maybe one background shot and whatever. People are getting, it's like, hey, do you want to see something with an urban background, right? Or something with a Western background, and changing it up and looking at what's topical. So, it's getting so inexpensive now to do some of this stuff that it's just sort of unlocking people's creativity, which is also kind of a fun change in the last couple of years.
Yeah, Beck, it actually comes out of the box with us. So if you're on Shopify, you're just taking a picture, right, of the product. Let's say you got a new vase in, you can take a picture and then be like, put it in a minimalist home, or put it in the like a holiday background kind of thing. And yeah, it just lets you do it now instantly.
Very cool.
For those of you that were asking, if you'd like to see how Ian has set up their website, it's industrywest.com. If you'd like to see how they're using high-res photography to drive that mission. Everyone here has mentioned tools. And one of the number one questions we always have is, how do I do this on a budget? I'm a small mom and pop, I want to innovate. And what advice would you give to any retailer when they're selecting and implementing these advanced tools? Where should they start? What should they look at? Where's the biggest bang for the buck? Or
I'd say number one is you have to, first of all, are you doing is it a marketing thing or is it like a utility? And if you're spending money, I would really focus on something that's like a utility first. For instance, a lot of retailers don't do specialty orders online because they can't sort of represent, like, like a sectional is like the best example. You can go into the store online, you're selling a preset, 3-piece, 5-piece, 7-piece, whatever, right? But in store, that could be, 8 pieces and it can be in any fabric, but that's really hard to represent online. And so if you've got something you're selling in store, but you're not selling online, and you can build a tool to make that online is like you have it in store and make it easy, that's where we're seeing people, it's almost like you're not really going to mess up the investment because it's something you're already selling, but you haven't been able to do it online. So find an easy unlock. I do a utility long before I do something like, it's kind of marketing and fun and make sure it's solving a real problem.
Yeah, I always say efficiency first. Is there like a head count, or is there hours of your own day that you're able to remove as a result of this tool? So a lot of that for me, excuse me, I think we'll get to this in a bit, but a lot of that is the actual on-site merchandising piece and the AI. Like I'm really focused on AI in that regard and computer learning in terms of what products are we showing to whom in what geo at what time of day and that sort of thing, and really taking the human element out of the merchandising piece and the PLP and the homepage and the recommendations on the PDP. So I'm always efficiency first. Yeah, how are you taking work off of someone's plate with this tool that you're adding?
And I would add to that, and it kind of goes back to your first question where we opened the conversation around the online shopping experience. What is a customer intending to do? When they visit a website, they want to see the products that you offer, and they want to build confidence in either it makes sense to go visit your store or they want to buy now. And at the end of the day, a retailer is a merchant, right? And so investing in those merchandising tools to help really deliver the right merchandise to help shoppers discover what they're looking for and really discover your full assortment, I think is one of the easiest ways to tap into your website investment and really leverage it, all of your photography investments, everything. Why are you doing all of that? You want to sell the products. You can't sell a product if people aren't accessing it. People can't access it unless it's properly merchandised. And so making those merchandising investments is also really important to help shoppers really discover what you've got and find what they're looking for on your site or in your store.
Yeah. And I would just add that it's a crawl, walk, run approach, right? Like do something, get results so that you can justify doing more and getting more results. And we work with so many brands on replatforming, kind of like Ian. I don't know if you shared, or we can help if you want to read Ian's An Industry West story about like replatforming. We often have these furniture companies that are either on custom platforms that they built out themselves, or they're on other legacy tech stacks, where for them to try to implement any sort of innovation, it takes countless hours, it takes so many resources. And if you're doing that, then yeah, you're not going to be able to test and to get the results in order to know what to do next. And so having the foundation, like having that platform, having that tech stack that enables you to say, hey, I really want to try this. Like, is there a solution that's already there that I can kind of just turn on or go look at instead of having to build them myself? I would say that's probably one of the biggest unlocks for furniture companies that want to start testing and figuring out what the tools that are available to them.
And I would add to that, I think that's a fabulous point, which is you need to really be able to measure. Unless you can measure it, you don't know, you're flying blind as to whether or not you're making a good investment, whether it's really having an impact. And so baking that in at the foundation of what, how do you measure success? How do you characterize success? And then how do you use that information to keep making more success, continue to optimize is really important. And so I'm not a fan of investments where you cannot measure the return. And I think most retailers, at least the ones we work with, are adamant about they need the ability to really measure and see that there's a return.
Laura, I know you've seen it all. Can you give us an example? So like the retailer that is, so I think you've seen probably many use cases, but the two big groups are the people who are really serious about investing in a product, know what they're looking for the tool, and know how to measure it. And then there's the people that you probably are not working with who are looking to chase the sexy new product. Can you just help anybody that might be watching knows that they're falling behind, may not be knowing what they're measuring? Can you tell them some common pitfalls to avoid, or something like just what should the first thing? I know you're always about how do you take data and make it actionable. What's the actionable thing that the retailer needs to be thinking about here before they even move into using a tool?
Well, I think they've got to make, to the point made earlier that Genesis made, you have to have a solid foundation. And so really looking at, do we have a platform that we can test things on, that we can launch things on in an easy way? We see retailers get stuck at some of the strangest places, like a product catalog, a Google shopping feed. They don't have that in place. And so having some of those basic blocking and tackling components in place is really important before you really start. Now you can get creative, and there are interesting solutions that don't necessarily require heavy web implementation. Like we're doing, for instance, lead gen. It's a very light touch and it requires almost no website integration. If you want to start to really personalize messages, et cetera, and identify leads in market, then, you know, that's a great investment. That's more of a marketing investment, less so of a technology investment, but it does rely on bits and bytes and match back and whatnot. So if I were a retailer trying to get started, I'd prioritize what my business problems are, check my foundation to make sure it's solid, that I really have a platform that I can innovate on, and then start to look at, you know, what do I want to influence more? Is it more traffic? Is it converting more traffic? Is it driving more engagement? Is it getting more people in store? And then find tools that align.
So Ian, I know you've been waiting to speak to this. Let's transition that tool, exactly what Lauren said, over to the merchandising, and how do you look at tools that are thinking about the merchandising piece and taking, as you recall, like I think you call it the human part of merchandising.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think on the e-commerce side, there are so many options. I was lucky enough to find a partner back when we were on Adobe Magento 8, 9 years ago that works within Shopify as well. It's called Nosto. There are a lot of different partners out there. That's a great one. But basically, finding a partner that allows allows malleability within its platform, but also like provides a really good AI element, which they do, and has, this is I always look for partners also that are very respectful and reactive to our recommendations. So this is one recently where we had a really awesome release with them just within the past few weeks, where we are merchandising at the variant SKU level as opposed to the parent SKU level. So if we have a product that comes in 20 colors, we're able to merchandise based on the inventory level of each color and not just the parent SKU. And that's something that was not out of the box with this partner. This is something that we kind of brainstormed with them, and we've actually seen a ton of lift in just being able to do that. It makes the catalog look broader. It allows us to show the higher inventory items higher. So, I mean, I think in looking for a merchandising partner, it's, again, like you want to find it's really important to find a tool that I always kind of call it like a wash and wear tool. Like, what is something that you'll be able to use, wear, wash again, and kind of go through the process with ease and not have to constantly go back to them for tweaks or for help necessarily, but something you feel comfortable using. Because just like anything else, adoption is key. If you're not willing to adopt it and use it and make measurable insights upon it based on the value you're getting, then it's really worthless and a waste of money. So, I mean, looking for a partner that is respectful of your time, your needs, something you feel comfortable with, something that is, usable for you as the client, and that you feel like you're willing to make adoption of. We found a great partner. Like I said, there's a lot out there, but yeah.
Ian made a good point. So sometimes there's the tool itself you might use, right? Like a configurator tool, but then there's like, what's my ways of working with this potential partner, right? And so asking a lot of questions like, well, how do I order something from you? How do I QA something from you? How do I set up something in your system? And making sure you're asking about kind of the asset management system or the content management system. Do I have access to that? How much access do my people have to? Can I do 50% of the process myself? If their answer is like email, Dropbox, like those are big red flags that it's going to be really hard to work with that partner. So making sure that you can self-serve as much as you want to is also a big part of a selection process.
Yeah.
When you're looking at merchandising strategies, I'm going to send this right back to you, Beck. Is there anything that a retailer should be looking at when they're evaluating like how effective their merchandising strategy is? I know that you guys are doing a lot of that with 3D and working on the consulting end, but can you talk through what specific things a retailer should be focusing on?
I just kind of using an example. One of my there's a company, Raymore and Flanagan. It's up in the Northeast. If you guys are familiar with, and great company, great background. They have a really good. There's this lady named Catherine there who has done so much experimenting with like the product page, like how should the tools be represented? How quickly can I get access to different tools? What's all the different? She's testing. Lots of different interesting content on the PDP. but their approach was pretty interesting, which was kind of a revolutionary change of the PDP. And they keep incrementing it to see, you know, what kind of impact that they can get. And so I'm not sure, like and I've seen other people take, you know, different, more incremental approaches. And but at least in terms of like seeing what Raymore has done, it's very entertaining. Like, go visit their product page. It's like very entertaining to look at. Like, it's very different than a typical PDP where you're going to get, you know, 3 or 4 pictures in, you know, a silo. There's just lots of different stuff that you can do from the PDP. Like, one thing, for instance, is, you know, we all have this rule, like, don't take anybody off. If they're at the PDP and they're about to hit add to cart, don't take them off the PDP. And so they said they wanted to add a link direct into a planning tool from the PDP where you could drop the product like into a planning tool, which nobody would recommend that, to leave the PDP into some other tool, but they did, and it's having some good effects. Not in all cases, but in some cases. And so I really like what they're doing in terms of just what I would call kind of heavy experimentation and not being afraid to do something a little different than what we typically see.
I think merchandising on the PDP is, you know, is fertile ground. I think if you get someone to the PLP and like you're pushing margin, you're pushing inventory, you're pushing, you know, new arrivals, that sort of thing to the top, or conversion rates, and that's kind of like table stakes and pretty basic merchandising. But if you're on the PDP and like a lot of, you know, companies running catalog ads, taking you straight from social media to the PDP, and then maybe seeing a fair amount of bounce rate off of that PDP. What are you doing? Like, to Beck's point, what are you doing to make incremental changes to that PDP to show other products, show other options, show other configurations, variants, et cetera, to maybe get more interest and get them to dive deeper? So I think there's a lot of untapped ground there for a lot of merchants.
I second that wholeheartedly. I think, to Beck's point, you don't want to take them off the PDP, so, you know, to some place where they can't add to cart. And so as a result, you know, you want to keep them on a PDP to really drive that engagement. You want them to consider additional products though, because in furniture especially, people are not going to buy just one piece usually. They're usually trying to buy pieces to fill a space. And so to the extent you can make your merchandising interactive to really help the shopper to discover and build confidence in the product that they're considering, but also see other products to consider with it, or see alternatives that really help get them to that one first right product, that really helps not only drive up engagement, but also to some degree conversion. So confidence in that first product as well as ticket size. But you don't want to interrupt the flow of them adding to cart. And so building experiences that help that is critical to really capitalizing on that fertile ground of the PDP.
I think Article does a really good job. I've seen Article's doing a great job of kind of building room packages is one. And I think that's something you're seeing a lot more of too, in terms of merchandising within the PDP and getting that AOV higher.
I was going to just say that that's funny you brought that up, because we're seeing the same thing too, where people are saying, hey, can I use this or that tool to, you know, build a custom package that's across 2 different manufacturers and give it a SKU, and, you know, which they wouldn't really, if you're not a manufacturer yourself and you don't have all the photography or information you need to do that, you know, it's time consuming and so people just don't do it. But if you have other ways of combining things to make custom packages and pricing them, and especially doing them around major events and holidays and that kind of stuff. So we're seeing more of that, where it's like, hey, I want to create these proprietary combinations and see if it, you know, gens interest.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of the biggest solutions we're seeing right now in home furnishings, especially for BFCM, for Black Friday, Cyber Monday coming up, is the bundling with specific like discounts and stuff specific for the holiday season. But just to go back to how you can improve merchandising in general, I think leveraging all of the content, all of the rich, that gold mine of data that you have in the customer service side of things, it's like, well, what are they asking? Are they asking, how does this product compare to another? And that's a good indicator that maybe you can implement a product comparison solution on that PDP. Are they asking, do you have this product? I only found this one. Maybe it's a good indicator that you can use a tool like Shopify Collective to test new products from other manufacturers on your site without having to carry your own inventory, so that that product is available and you don't lose the customer to another site? Are they asking, yeah, can I, if I order X amount of products, can I get a discount? Good indicators of promotions that you can offer, or those bundles that you can offer. So just the customers are telling you what they need, and what you need to add to the to improve your merchandising. But it's a matter of being able to analyze that, to understand it, and then to implement it in real time, right? Like I was just talking to a customer that says they're monitoring it all the time to see what customers are saying, and if they realize that there's an FAQ that's missing, or that there's a description about the product that's missing that doesn't make that much sense, then they go and immediately change it. So having the ability and the flexibility to make those updates in real time on your website is crucial.
You brought up a really interesting point. It actually goes back to something Laura was saying earlier, that a point in the mapped merchandising journey is looking at the abandoned cart, not as an abandoned cart, but a shopping list. And I heard you talk about personalization, and I think we kind of skipped over a little bit of the juice that's here. But how has the expectation of personalization and online merchandising really changed that shopping journey? And then what are the technologies right there that are most effective for personalizing that for a customer? I'm gonna send it over to you, Laura.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can definitely cover that. And so this is a space we've been in now for almost 10 years, which is personalization, specifically in home furnishings, and helping shoppers really discover as much as they can and have really overcome the paradox of choice, which is this concept that consumers want choice, people want choice, but when you overwhelm them with the number of choices, they get discouraged and they don't move forward. And so our whole platform is based on that concept of show me the relevant stuff to what I'm trying to achieve, and anticipate my needs and give me that. And personalization in today's world, you know, you were asking Shannon earlier, what technologies should people consider kind of foundationally? People, since the dawn of Amazon, people have been enjoying personalization and recommendations. And it is really very much a necessary component, especially in the on-site shopping journey. In the store, you've got the retailer's sales associate that can help, but often they also need help. And so embedding personalization and interactivity in that merchandising is really critical across the entire shopping journey, whether it's looking at the product listing pages and being able to see alternatives right there, whether it's on the product detail page and showing shoppers what other items they might want to consider instead of this or in addition to this, whether it's conversion or ticket size, and even on the cart page, right? So if you can merchandise coordinating items that don't take them away from the cart, but they can easily add to cart. So small case goods, accessories, not a configurable sectional, because you don't want them to leave that cart page. But all of those strategies really help in, number one, building confidence that this retailer has the assortment you want. Number two, helping you find that specific needle in the haystack. And number three, helping you convert, whether it's in store or on site.
We actually have an interesting product. It was great. We actually have I was thinking about like what does personalization kind of look like in the future? And you were talking about the paradox of choice. Like, we work with quite a few like office furniture manufacturers, and apparently you have to have a gazillion options in office, right? Between the coasters and the arms and the back and the fabric, and like it could be in the hundreds of millions of options that somebody could choose, which is tough for a dealer, let alone like a homeowner. And so we worked with Herman Miller and built this like it's still very much in like prototype stage, but originally it was like a chatbot AI tool to just ask questions about the product, like, you know, what's the right coaster for, you know, if you have a carpet or a hardwood floor. But that's morphing now into, instead of having like the, you know, the drop down picker with, you know, all the different options where you're scrolling left and right and dropping down, to have more of a natural language interface where you could say, hey, show me, you know, something in royal blue. Right. And so it automates all the choices from the picker, or at least narrows them down. And so I think that's personal, that kind of stuff is, you know, fruitful ground for the next few years in terms of like getting through that paradox of choice in a natural language way that's an easy UX and improves the PDP experience. So we think that that's probably a big move in this space.
Ian, did you have anything you wanted to add? I know that you guys are doing more of the 2D generation, but did you have anything you wanted to add just around personalization?
I mean, everything's personalized in one way or another these days, right? I mean, the product recommendations, the merchandising is personalized. I'm not as much of like in the furniture space. I always had kind of personalization sold to me as if you bought the DeWalt power driver, you're going to want to buy the DeWalt power saw. Never really saw that in furniture as if like, you're going to buy the same end table that goes with the sofa. I don't think that's always the case, especially for today's residential consumer. But I think in terms of, what you recently looked at, what may be adjacent to what you recently looked at, I think like all that personalization is important and is only going to continue to get better. And that it's not just in merchandising, but also on-site search as well is all, personalized based on your browser history or your browsing history on that site. But yeah, I mean, I don't think we're doing anything off the wall with that. But trying to a little bit based on persona, based on whether we know we have a trade buyer versus a D2C buyer, B2B versus D2C buyer, we are personalizing a bit and giving a little different copy on the PDP, et cetera. Yeah.
It's actually a good point, Ian, that one thing we've learned is that like you want to know, are you a contractor, you trade, are you a homeowner, are you a pro, are you a designer working for somebody and if you, and just asking that question of somebody without something in return is like, why would I fill that out as a user? And so if you do have some value add, like Laura's tool or other tools where, before you access this tool, you say, oh, are you a homeowner? Are you a tradesperson? Are you a contractor? Are you a pro? Like, it's a reason for you to start, self-identifying, which also goes back into Ian's, personalization discussion.
I want to go, since we only have a few minutes left, I'd like to go around the room one time, and I would like to have each of you leave your best gem with anybody that's watching who is on here saying, I need to figure out how to drive sales and use online with merchandising strategy. What's the best thing that you can leave them with today? You guys left so many good gems, but I'd like them to leave with like one thing that maybe they haven't heard or one thing they really need to leave out here before they go. Genesis, would you mind kicking us off?
Yeah, I would say that there's a lot of really cool things that you can try. But like we said earlier, if you don't have that foundation set, then you're just going to end up with this like hodgepodge of solutions built on solutions built on solutions. And then it's going to be a mess to scale. It's going to be impossible to scale. And so, yes, like things like AR, VR, like immersive experiences, all these things are really interesting. But before you get there, just make sure you're building that on a solid foundation. And then fix those easy things first. Like I said, crawl, walk, and then run. So yeah, make sure that those bases are covered, that your data is unified, that it's on one platform, all of it, the D2C, the retail, the B2B, just to make it more simplified so that you can scale and innovate faster.
Sure. Ian?
Yeah, I mean, I'll double down on that and just I've always said, everyone keeps saying pivot, 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 but forgets the part of pivoting where you actually have 1 foot solid in place. So establish what that 1 foot solid in place is and stay true to your brand. And piggybacking on that is, whatever tool you use, like we talked about earlier, just make sure it works for you. I mean, a great tool for me may not be a great tool for you. It's a lot about adoption, a lot about ease of use, a lot about the partner. So whether it's a merchandising tool, an on-site search tool, an AR, 3D tool, just make sure it works for you.
As everyone else thinking of that moment in Friends where they said pivot, pivot.
Pivot.
Clearly they didn't have that foundation, didn't have that foot planted. Exactly. All right, Beck, what do you got for us?
I'd say so. The place we're seeing furniture retailers have a lot of success. I mentioned sectionals before, but really started with like Lovesac when they came out, what was it, 10 years ago, and offered this idea that you could build your own and had all these different accessories and cool things. And now we're seeing, like with Way More Rooms to Go, Modern One, which is the Scott Brothers brand, which is really nice, kind of a competing brand to Lovesac. And then we're seeing like Ashley's coming out with a new one or has already. And so that seems to be a space in terms of like, I think configurable sectional type stuff makes up about 20% of online sales for 20% of sales for most furniture retailers. And that's a category that's got a lot of dynamics and interest and consumer interest in it right now. So that's a place where we're definitely seeing, lots of people invest and lots of people have good success. So that's what I'd recommend.
And Laura.
I would say, I agree with the solid foundation. At the end of the day, customers are coming to furniture retailers to help them furnish a home. And to the extent that your online experience can really showcase the merchandise that is relevant to that person discovering their home in your merchandise is really critical. And so helping consumers do that, retailers spend a lot of money on the vignettes in the store. How do you take that inspirational type of experience and bring that to online to help build confidence that you're the retailer that shopper can find what they're looking for, get the inspiration, and ultimately buy from? And then, customer lifetime value. How do you then keep in touch with that customer to keep in front of them for the seasonal refreshes, et cetera, will really ultimately reduce your cost of acquisition and help you drive more profitable sales.
I appreciate everything that you guys brought. I think there's been some really good information here. Laura, Genesis, Beck, Ian, thank you guys so much for sharing with us. For any of them that's still hanging out and watching, you're clearly trying to solve an online merchandising issue, and I highly, highly, highly encourage you to reach out to any of these folks, whether it's Shopify, whether it's Shoptelligence or 3D Cloud. They all have incredible resources and tools. Check them out. There's a reason that they are as successful as they are, and they know what they're talking about if we want to keep the conversation going. From everyone here at HFA, we appreciate you guys tuning in and hope that you join us next week, where we're going to be talking about some additional visual merchandising that drives consumer behavior. So same time next week. Otherwise, have a great weekend and hope everyone has a good sales.